2026 Horoscope reveals zodiac signs poised for love and romance. Imagine that as more than a headline. Picture a year when the heart stops feeling like a series of random sparks and begins to unfold like a deliberate story. Small scenes that accumulate into something steady, surprising, and tender. Picture ordinary days shifting in tone so that the ordinary itself becomes a signal. A smile across the room, a shared habit that grows into a promise, a moment where someone finally hears you and stays. 2026 arrives with a quiet permission for love to be less about drama and more about depth. If you've been living under the weight of pattern, repeating the same flirtations, tolerating the same half-commitments, wondering if your heart is set to repeat its script, this year offers a different grammar. Not every sign will experience the same choreography, but many will find that what they once thought of as luck or timing starts to feel like readiness, a readiness inwardly cultivated, a readiness that attracts an encounter tuned to that openness. Think of 2026 as a season that encourages you to become a person who can hold a mature relationship rather than merely hoping one will arrive. This is not fortune-telling disguised as certainty. Astrology here is offered as insight and invitation, an imaginative map for reflection and gentle preparation, not a promise of a particular outcome. Still, the patterns are clear enough to sketch major emotional currents. Spring as awakening, summer as the testing of care under heat, autumn as the work of consolidation, and the year-end as a snapshot of what growth has made possible. Across signs, the language of the year is vulnerability, trust, and the slow alchemy of companionship. If you want the full sign-by-sign forecast for 2026, subscribe so you don't miss your sign. Aries, you have spent years living on momentum. Your heart learns by leaping first and thinking later. You are the person who ignites a room just by entering it. In 2026, that spark still exists, but it finds a new purpose, deepening rather than only beginning. Early in the year, something subtle begins to shift. An intuition, a repeated encounter, or a conversation that lingers past the usual exit line. It's not necessarily a grand, cinematic meeting. More often, it arrives as a person who refuses shortcuts, who meets your energy with steadiness instead of matching your pace step for step. Come spring, that steadying presence becomes a mirror for a different courage. Not the bravado of conquering, but the bravery of confession. You may find yourself saying things you usually keep clipped. I'm scared. I need help. I don't know how to let go. When you voice that, the partner who's meant to stay will listen rather than fix. That listening will act like oxygen. Your fire will not be smothered, it will be refined.
Speak of your needs as a request for care rather than an ultimatum. When you make space for honest conversation, without expecting a dramatic, instant transformation, you give the relationship room to prove itself over time. Patience, again, is the ally. You assess fidelity not through a single grand gesture, but through repeated, ordinary acts. Autumn often brings healing. Shadows of suspicion lift as history is rewritten in small corrective deeds, consistent kindnesses that contradict old fears. That's when your commitment can deepen into a sense of security that feels earned. By the end of the year, you may find that what began as daily kindness has become a dependable harbor. The core lesson for you is the valor of constancy. Choose the long gestures hidden in the short ones. Gemini, you are fluent in many languages of charm. Your mind delights in novelty. Your heart is impressed by wit. You flirt with ideas as much as people. In 2026, the invitation is to root one of those curiosities in depth. Early on, you might meet someone who resists the usual fast-paced banter and instead asks questions that slow you down. These questions feel less like sparring and more like excavation, gentle, persistent, and curious. They may make you uncomfortable at first because they demand presence beyond your usual speed. Spring becomes an opening where depth feels possible. You'll find that when a conversation persists past headlines, when someone listens to the unsaid and returns with understanding, that is where the seed of lasting romance lives. This spring, try staying in the conversation longer. Resist the urge to change topics midstream. Let someone see the full scatter of your thoughts. and notice how staying with you signals a desire for more than entertainment. Summer introduces friction, often around the difference between play and seriousness. For lovers of variety, a relationship can start to feel like a limit. The challenge here is not to erase your variety, but to allow it to thrive within a container. If you commit to showing up, even when the script becomes routine, you'll discover that routine can be a canvas for new colors. Repair becomes essential during this phase. If a disagreement sparks, practice the art of returning, without dramatics, with curiosity instead of accusation. Autumn tests whether your curiosity can be loyal. It asks you to demonstrate a willingness to be present for ordinary seasons, sick nights, boring errands, comfortable silences. If you can do that, year-end may gift you a romance where expansion and steadiness coexist. You keep exploring together, not apart. The lesson is that novelty needn't be an enemy of depth. It simply learns new ways to play when anchored by mutual choice. Cancer, you carry the language of safety in your chest. You have known what it means to love protectively, and sometimes that protection becomes a barrier to receiving.
In 2026, a person arrives who doesn't rush to fix or to rescue. Instead, they offer steadiness and a willingness to sit with you in your interior seasons. Early in the year, that presence may feel like balm, someone who shows up with patient listening and small rituals that soothe. Spring is a time of deep bonding for you. In those months, emotional walls lower in tender increments. A shared playlist, a handwritten note, the slow learning of how you like to be held after a hard day. These are the moves that turn friendship into sanctuary. You may be hesitant to name this as romance at first because it feels too familiar to be true. Trust is cultivated by acts, not pronouncements. Summer challenges you to do emotional labor that feels risky, to say, "I need you," without making it a test. The stakes here are intimacy, not drama. When conflict arises, notice whether your instinct is to retreat into shell or to demand proof. Try instead to voice the tender claim you want, your desire for touch, time, or reassurance without coercion. The person who is right for you in 2026 will respond not with grand statements, but with consistent gestures of presence. Autumn may rearrange practical aspects of life. Living spaces, schedules, or financial rhythms may need negotiation. Your strength is in your capacity to nurture through these transitions. If you both invest in these practical reconciliations, year-end could present a new sense of home, not just a roof, but a felt, shared security. The lesson offered is that vulnerability is not a weakness. It's the doorway through which sustained love passes. Leo, you are magnetized by the stage, you shine, and you expect to be seen. In 2026, the most meaningful encounter you might have is not someone who mirrors your public brilliance, but someone who treasures your quiet when the curtain falls. Early in the year, an unexpected person, perhaps unassuming, perhaps not flashy, catches your attention by honoring the private you. This person turns off the floodlights and stays for the offstage conversation. Spring brings a tension familiar to you, ego versus intimacy. Pride can create distance if you guard the self that is adored. This season asks you to practice small acts of surrender, allowing someone to comfort you without performance, sharing vulnerabilities that do not require applause. When you choose humility, you invite reciprocity that is not merely a reflection of your radiance, but a recognition of your inner tender. Summer's test can be impatience. Leos hate feeling unseen, and when your partner doesn't respond in ways you expect, it can sting. The wiser approach is to communicate what attention you need, and to notice how their love might be offered in different formatting: quiet service, thoughtfulness, or steadfast support. If you learn to celebrate these alternative languages, your satisfaction will deepen beyond external validation. Autumn consolidates a softer form of admiration: gratitude. You find that your partner's steady presence behind the scenes complements your public persona. This balance can create a relationship where you're free to shine because someone holds the backstage with care. Your lesson is that greatness is incarnated in presence, that small, unseen devotion completes rather than diminishes your glory. Virgo, you are typically inclined to improve what you touch. You analyze, you plan, you manage. In 2026, love asks you to loosen the grip of analysis and to allow for messiness as the raw material of intimacy. Early in the year, someone arrives who upends your preference for predictability. Perhaps chaotic in ways that make your system stumble, but also alive in a way that teaches you delight. When spring arrives, the key will be to practice spontaneity. That might look terrifying on paper. A plan abandoned for the sake of a last-minute road trip, a laugh allowed to spill over, an unperfected meal eaten without critique. These minor rebellions against your own standards will reveal a different kind of order, an order not imposed but chosen. Someone who appreciates you, not because you are efficient, but because you are you, will appear and will be willing to navigate your complex inner life without trying to fix it into something tidy. Summer's heat will likely bring doubt. You may question whether the relationship fits your long-term criteria: stability, sensible decisions, a tidy future. The season asks not to abandon prudence, but to weigh it against the possibility of being known. Can you accept a partner who keeps you on your toes intellectually and surprises you emotionally? If you can, the relationship may grow in ways your careful plans didn't anticipate but can still honor. Autumn tests trust versus control. Will you let the other person inhabit the space next to you without micromanaging their love? If the answer is yes, year-end may reveal a softer, more authentic version of yourself, someone who receives affection without immediately cataloging it. The lesson here is surrendering analysis to feeling, to let life be lived rather than fully documented. From Aries' fire to Taurus's roots, Gemini's curiosity to Cancer's sanctuary, Leo's stage to Virgo's careful hands. Each sign is being invited into a version of love that asks less for proof and more for presence. The rhythms repeat in different costumes: a call to patience, a practice of trust, a request to show up in small ways that mean everything. Yet the story is far from finished. Half the signs have begun their transformations, and the rest of the zodiac waits at the edge of its own turning. There are surprises yet to come, signs that must unlearn certain defenses, signs that will discover love in unexpected forms, and moments when partnership will ask for practical rearrangement of life. The middle of the year promises tests that reveal who is willing to stay through ordinary heat. The autumn months will ask for decisions that consolidate effort into companionate structure. For some, year-end will feel like a harvest, quiet, mature, and steady. For others, it will simply be the first season where real work begins. Keep in mind, across these stories, tenderness is not always dramatic. Often, it is the manner in which someone remembers your coffee order, returns your call, sits with you through silence, or defends your dignity in a small public way. In 2026, romance tends to be seeded in such acts, and those seeds are what we watch unfold. As the first half of the zodiac finds its shape this year, the remaining signs prepare their own arcs. Libra will face the music of timing and balance. Scorpio will be shown a pathway from guarded testing to calm trust. Sagittarius will learn how freedom and commitment can widen one another. Capricorn will discover tenderness as a kind of legacy. Aquarius may find that the mind-led heart is ready to settle into felt belonging. Pisces will be guided toward a union that honors sensitivity without sacrifice. Each sign's journey is distinct, but all of them converge on similar lessons: courage to be vulnerable, patience to allow love to settle, and the humility to accept help. Between the seasons and the small gestures of daily life, 2026 asks one quiet thing: will you become the kind of person whose life naturally makes room for another? This is not about changing who you are. It is about maturing into the person who can sustain a deeper kind of intimacy. For many, that maturation begins now, in subtle ways. As the story unfolds, we will meet Libra and the rest of the signs on their own thresholds, each with its particular test and promise. For now, breathe in the idea that love in 2026 is less often a lightning strike and more often a steady light that learns to burn without consuming. When you are ready to continue exploring what the middle and latter signs may expect and how your own seasonal path might look, stay with this map. The year is only midway open, and even within the first seasons, there are decisions that will set the tone for everything that follows. From Virgo's careful hands to Libra's search for balance, the story of 2026 keeps unfolding. Libra, this year, asks you to make a decision about tempo. How fast do you invite someone into the room where you keep your heart? You are tuned to harmony. You want the relationship to feel beautiful not only on a date night, but in the quiet arithmetic of daily life. In past seasons, you may have kept yourself measured, waiting for the right symmetry, the right timing. In 2026, timing itself becomes an active partner. Early in the year, an encounter may arrive that is less about fireworks and more about proportion. It might be someone who notices your little rituals and imitates them subtly, folding your book the same way, sending a song that matches your mood, showing up at the cafe you find soothing. These small echoes serve as an early test. Can someone attune to your rhythms without asking you to change them? For Libra, attraction often begins in the space where someone reflects your taste, your sense of fairness, your delight in shared aesthetics. But reflection alone is not enough. You'll want to see whether this person can balance your desire for beauty with the work of intimacy. Spring becomes a season of alignment. Conversations lengthen beyond the pleasant. They reach into values. What matters when the table goes uncleaned, when plans shift, when money gets tight. For you, these practical harmonies matter because they reveal the architecture of partnership. You may find yourself deciding whether to let someone into your decision-making patterns, to ask you opinion, to carry a calendar that includes your preferences, to argue about paint colors and still mean it. If the person can discuss compromise with curiosity rather than defensiveness, the seed of companionship deepens. Spring also invites you to practice asking for what you want with clarity. Your instinct to keep things smooth can sometimes silence a need. This season, naming it is the act of keeping the music playing. Summer brings heat that is as much about timing as it is about temperament. Libra, you may encounter the age-old test of speed versus depth. Does a partner keep pace with your desire to move carefully, or do they push for leaps you are not ready to take? There's a temptation to rush toward a picture that looks ideal, wedding rings, cohabitation, public declarations, because you like the symmetry of those markers. In 2026, you're asked to notice whether that desire comes from authentic alignment or from an anxious chase for equilibrium. A wise question in mid-year is, does this feel steady when no one's watching? The answer will reveal the difference between someone who loves your curated life and someone who loves your actual life, mess and all. Autumn is a time of negotiation and practical merging. This season will press you to consolidate who pays which bills, how holidays are shared, how your social calendar blends. These conversations may be unexpectedly intimate. They require you to stake claims not just to aesthetics, but to logistics. For Libra, the lesson is to translate your taste for balance into durable systems, agreements that hold up when excitement subsides. This is not romance's most cinematic chapter, but it's its most decisive, harmony lived rather than merely performed. By year-end, you may find that what felt tentative in spring has become a comfortable choreography. The partnership by late 2026 is likely to be one where beauty is not only shown on evenings out, but in the ways two people decide repeatedly to accommodate each other's imperfections. Your core lesson is to trust the slow work of mutual adjustment, that the music of a relationship gains depth when two partners are willing to rewrite parts of the score for one another's sake. Love for you in 2026 is poised as the art of negotiation, gentle, persistent, and ultimately rewarding. From Libra's search for equilibrium, we pass to Scorpio's deeper current, where control gives way to surrender and intensity softens into steady intimacy.
Scorpio, your life's theme often reads like an excavation. You probe, you test, you insist on depth. In 2026, the challenge is to allow intimacy that does not require perpetual proving. Someone enters your orbit who does not flinch at your intensity, but also does not need you to prove yourself in grand gestures. This person invites you into a silence that is not empty but full, a depth that steadies rather than swamps. Early in the year, an experience may reveal itself as corrective. Encounters that repeatedly defy the old scripts of manipulation or extreme testing. Instead of feeling compelled to push and measure loyalty, you may find your energy drawn to someone whose steadiness becomes an implicit curriculum, quiet actions that teach you trust by example. These initial months are about recalibrating suspicion. The real work is watching for small, consistent behaviors that contradict old fears. When spring opens, intimacy may deepen as you practice less defense and more disclosure. For Scorpios, vulnerability is the currency. They trade it for authenticity. This spring, you are invited to give up one particular protective ritual, the need to control the narrative. Letting someone hold a piece of your past without trying to manage their interpretation can be a radical experiment. If you try it and survive, more calmer, more reciprocal love becomes possible. Summer tests whether this softer depth can survive friction. Old patterns may surface when stress hits: jealousy, the urge to interrogate, the temptation to vanish and reappear dramatically. The healthier route in 2026 is repair with transparency. Instead of enacting scenes designed to provoke proof, practice asking for clarity and offering it in return. When you exchange secrecy for sharing, your intimacy matters less as a battleground and more as a sanctuary. Autumn often blesses you with quiet consolidation. The person who has weathered your storms and stayed through the quieter seasons will signal commitment not by spectacle, but by consistent presence, sharing burdens, honoring boundaries, keeping confidences. For Scorpios, this is a form of resurrection, where depth no longer translates to control, but to generosity of soul. The year-end image may be of a private room in which two people sit across from one another, the silence between them comfortable, the trust evident in small, ordinary acts. Your lesson for 2026 is about surrender, not as defeat, but as an art of recalibrated power. By choosing to let your heart be known without weaponizing it, you open a space where love can be tender and abiding rather than a trial by fire. Move next to Sagittarius, whose story in 2026 is about finding a relationship that increases freedom rather than compresses it. You are the wanderer whose horizons are sacred. Commitment has sometimes felt like a fence. This year, you may discover a form of partnership that functions like a shared map, someone who wants to travel beside you, not tether you. Early in the year, an encounter could arrive in the form of a collaborator, a person whose ideals and appetite for experience match yours, yet who respects your need for wildness. Spring invites playful co-creation. Joint projects, creative, professional, or simply a travel plan may ignite your sense of adventure in new ways. This is the season when shared curiosity becomes a love language. You build intimacy by discovering together instead of by settling down in the traditional sense. Let the relationship's promises be adventures rather than constraints. Summer will test the balance between independence and mutual commitment. The challenge is not to abandon your freedom, but to view it as a shared asset. If you feel boxed in, examine whether the box is something you agreed to or something you secretly allowed. In 2026, the most successful Sagittarian partnerships are likely to be those that create structures that actually foster exploration. Scheduled solo time, mutually supported projects, and clear communication about boundaries. The ability to say, "I need a week to myself," and have it respected becomes a form of intimacy, not a withdrawal. Autumn may press for consolidation. While you thrive on expansion, this season will ask you to practice staying put for a stretch that allows roots to take hold. It's here you'll test whether shared goals, starting a joint venture, considering cohabitation, or rearranging life plans, can exist without hollowing out the spaces you treasure. If you both agree on a shared horizon, the results can be expansive rather than constrictive. By year-end, Sagittarius may find a partnership that is both a launch pad and a home base, someone who encourages risk and celebrates return. The lesson is that commitment, properly negotiated, can be a widening of life rather than its reduction. Your freedom need not be sacrificed to love. In the best case, love becomes a companion on your path, not a detour. Capricorn now. Your narrative in 2026 concerns the translation of ambition into tenderness. You are accustomed to measured plans and carefully achieved milestones. Love for you sometimes arrives as another project to manage. This year, you may be challenged to treat partnership instead as a legacy of the heart rather than an item on a list. Early in the year, a person might soften your edges, not by asking you to become less capable, but by showing you that success tastes different when it's shared.
Spring is a season for emotional authenticity. You may start to reveal private hopes you've kept boxed away, dreams that aren't about status, but about meaning. Sharing these intimacies with a partner who doesn't judge your ambition, but who values your interior life, can be a surprise. Suddenly, your calendar is not just about meetings and targets, but also about dinners where attention, not achievement, is currency. Summer's heat tests balance between work and relationship. Caps are famous for their discipline, thus the friction often emerges from schedules and priorities. 2026 asks you to practice a different kind of discipline, one that includes consistent emotional presence. This might mean leaving an email unanswered for dinner, or reserving one weekend per month for shared projects. These are not small concessions. To you, they are choices that reorient what success actually means. Autumn could bring practical consolidation, perhaps moving in together or merging bank accounts in small, careful steps. The work here is in negotiating the mundane in ways that respect both your practicality and your partner's needs. When done well, these arrangements become the architecture of intimacy, a base camp from which both your aspirations can be pursued with less loneliness. By year-end, the reward for integrating tenderness into your life may be a partnership that feels like a meaningful extension of your values, reliable, purposeful, and quietly affectionate. Your lesson is this: letting love matter does not detract from your achievements, it deepens their impact. From Capricorn's measured heart to Aquarius's liberated mind, 2026 offers the water-bearer a rare opportunity to convert intellectual connection into emotional home. You prize perspective and often lead with ideas. This year, someone may arrive who grounds your thoughts with steady feeling. Early on, an unusual friendship could show signs of becoming more, someone who admires your eccentricities and joins your experiments without trying to tame them. In spring, the romance grows as thought and feeling converge. Conversations that once stayed on abstract planes begin to land in personal soil. You talk about childhood impressions, fears, and small domestic likes. For an Aquarian, letting personal details in is a kind of risk, but in 2026, that risk is likely to reveal a partner who responds with curiosity rather than judgment. This is the season to notice whether your mental intimacy can carry the weight of emotional commitments. Summer's test arrives in the form of consistency. You may be tempted to prioritize projects or causes over a person. The question becomes whether your partner can be allowed the status of co-custodian for your time and attention, not as an obstacle, but as an invited collaborator. Attending to routine matters may feel oddly revolutionary to you because it signals that you value the other's small needs enough to revise your agenda.
Autumn might bring public acknowledgement or decisions that have social repercussions, bringing a partner to a group event, introducing them to an important circle, or choosing to make your relationship visible in a new way. For Aquarians, this is a test of whether your private life can coexist with your public identity. If handled with generosity, visibility can feel liberating rather than constraining. Year-end can hold the feeling of an emotional homecoming, a place where your mind is lively and your heart feels anchored. Your lesson is that radical freedom and intimate belonging are not opposites. They can coexist when you invite someone to be both your confidant and your co-conspirator. Finally, Pisces. For you, 2026 may be the year tenderness stops asking you to dissolve and starts inviting you to co-create. You've often loved with vastness, sometimes losing portion of yourself in the effort to keep someone else afloat. This year, an encounter is likely to arrive that honors your sensitivity while encouraging clearer boundaries. Early in the year, someone may appear who sees your depth and responds with steadiness rather than overwhelm. Spring is a season of mutual healing. Shared rituals, whether a weekly walk, a nightly conversation, or a creative collaboration, anchor your empathy in practical rhythms. You learn to accept care without feeling indebted, to receive without believing you must repay with martyrdom. The person you meet may model a measured steadiness that helps you translate compassion into sustainable practice. Summer tests boundaries and clarity. Where once you might have acquiesced to others' demands in order to keep the peace, 2026 presses you to speak truth with kindness. This is not a season for silent sacrifice. Rather, it's a time to practice honest requests in ways that preserve your tenderness without dissolving your selfhood. When you articulate your needs and see them respected, the relationship deepens in a way that restores rather than depletes. Autumn consolidates commitment based on mutual care. Small, consistent gestures, checking in, arranging practical tasks, holding space during rough moments accrue into a felt safety. The partnership becomes less about rescue and more about reciprocal nourishment. For Pisces, the lesson is that sensitivity is a gift when paired with healthy boundaries. You don't have to turn your heart into a geography of other people's needs. By year-end, many Pisceans may find that what once felt like one-sided devotion has transformed into a steady, creative companionship. Someone who loves you for your imagination and supports you in everyday realities. Your core lesson in 2026 is to allow your sensitivity to be a bridge, not a burden, a source of connection that invites reciprocity. Across these 6 signs, the seasons keep their promises. Spring awakens, summer tests, autumn consolidates, and year-end gathers what has been sown.
The common chords are clear. 2026 asks for courage to be vulnerable, the patience to let tenderness accrue slowly, and the humility to accept help and to reciprocate it. Love in this year is less often an immediate headline than a series of small, deliberate decisions that add up to something durable. If you listen closely, you will notice the same gentle instruction repeating through every sign. Show up, speak honestly about your needs, and allow ordinary acts of care to accumulate into trust. Romance here is not only the flash of new attraction, but the choice to share a life in the particulars. The way someone remembers your coffee order, the way they defend your dignity in a small crowd, the way they continue to be present when novelty fades. For many signs, 2026 will feel like a long-awaited permission to be soft without losing oneself. As you close this hour of listening, take a moment to reflect. Where in your life is the slow work needed? Which seasonal beat, awakening, test, consolidation are you currently living? Whatever your sign, the invitation is the same. Become the kind of person who makes room for loving depth, and you're likely to find that the year returns the favor. If this forecast spoke to you, tell us which sign resonates in the comments. Share your experience and pass this to someone you think might find comfort in the 2026 forecast. If this felt helpful, like and share, and consider subscribing for deeper, sign-specific explorations that will help you walk the seasons of this year with a little more confidence and a lot more heart.